Um, as I mentioned earlier, you've gone through this major transition, and it's grueling. It's really tough because it's tedious. It's so many moving parts. So I thought that it would be great for you to walk us through what was it that worked, and what are some things that you ran into that was ultimately fine, but it took time, and also what were some things that just was not going to work and then you had to do from scratch. So give us an outline of your approach, and then we'll dig into it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple caveats too. I think Amazon 3 years ago, so I started the transition really at the beginning of 2022, and Amazon in 2022 is much different than Amazon is starting 2024, which I know it's not a huge amount of time, but the processes and procedures that it takes have tightened and have become even, I think, harder than when I started the transition from 1P to 3P. But I think one of my biggest takeaways from the transition was I tried to hire an agency to help me with it, which ultimately slowed the process down because they didn't know my business. I had to educate them on the business. I had to educate them where I was at, why I wanted to go from 1P to 3P, which was still kind of a debate at that time, which one was better than the other and reasons why. I think that debate has swung towards a lot of brands leaning to move to 3P if they haven't moved to 3P already. And each brand has their own reasons, but I think from the actual task list of getting it done, there's a lot. I mean, you can transition your catalog in one day, but you're going to have a lot of red tape. You're going to have suppressed listings. You're going to not, if depending what programs you were a part of in 1P and how long you've been on 1P, some of those programs may not exist anymore, and current Amazon employees may not even know how to get you out of those programs to unsuppress some of your listings on 3P. So there's just a lot. I mean, I learned, I think in that year and a half, 2 years of transition, I learned more in regards to Amazon and the operating side of the back end of Amazon than I had learned in the previous 10 or 11 years that I'd worked on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, operating, because as a first party vendor, you're getting a purchase order and then you're shipping it, right? So there isn't really much hands-on stuff that you are involved with. But as a third party seller, it's every day. That's your place of business. You're going in, you're checking everything, from your listings to shipments to, rate all these ratings, the reviews, and everything else, right? So it's a real operating area. So to me, the what I'm finding is creating a listing as a third party seller, as a brand owner, is already hard enough because you have flat files, you have this, you have that, you have the and of course they don't really know, and the brand registry is obviously there for you to show that you are the brand owner, but still there are checks and balances to make sure that the changes that you're making to the listing, they are legit and it's coming from an authorized party. When you are a first party vendor, your listings were created already, and now you're switching to third party. Walk us through that part of taking control of the listings.
It's near impossible. It's doable. It's doable, and I've done it. I'm done with it. But it was a lot of sleepless nights. Amazon has their hierarchy pyramid, and 1P is close to the top. There's retail contributions, which is one higher, and then there's leadership, which is even higher than that. And then there's, I think, brand registry sellers, and then, resellers, which have very little control. But as a brand, and even being on Seller Central and being brand registered, I was still lower from contribution rights perspective than my 1P account, and then I'm lower than Amazon, which they have a tool now, which I don't know when it came out, but it's called Data Augmenter, which now can be, I think AI is actually creating one of the things is like a size attribute and it's pulling from your flat file, but in my case, it wasn't pulling correctly. But there, and I would have to make the argument that, hey, I'm the brand owner, I'm this, and this, but it's a process and you have to stay dedicated to it and you can't let tickets close and you have to just keep going. I think the most I got up to was like 35 back and forths before I was finally able to get a listing put under my brand and saying that my third party account had full authority. And ultimately, all that being said, ultimately what I had to do was delete every single product from Vendor Central. And then that was when brand registry finally allowed me to have control over my catalog on 3P.
So but the listings in your Vendor Central account are created by Amazon, right?
Correct. So technically Amazon owns them, but I had to work through different channels and ultimately had to have those deleted in order. And so if you looked at my Vendor Central catalog right now, there's 0 products in it because I had to have it all deleted. So then after a certain amount of time, I don't remember what it is, but then it switches over to the brand and the contributor on 3P. So yeah, and a lot of the process is a waiting game. So I did not start with my hero ASINs because I didn't know what the process would look like. I started with low volume ASINs and learned the processes. And then by the end, I was able to transition my hero ASINs over without much of a headache.
So you are asking Amazon to delete those listings from your Vendor Central. So you're not something you are doing yourself, right?
Yeah, so it was like obviously we can all go into edit and delete or permanently mark as unfulfillable, or I don't remember what it's called, but we can do that, but that does not delete the actual listing. So, and you can do inventory feed files on Seller Central, right? To delete a listing and re-upload after 24 or 48 hours if you need to fix an attribute. But to my knowledge, you can't do that on Vendor Central because Amazon actually controls those listings and it's just much harder. So the transition took a lot of hand holding and collaboration, I guess, on Amazon's part. But it's a lot of time and effort. I mean, it's, and like I mentioned, I hired some people to help me with it, but because the knowledge of the brand and the history of the brand on Amazon and everything wasn't there, it almost made it more cloudy. So a lot of the work fell on me personally, because a lot of it was, going back and forth the brand registry or Vendor Central and explaining this, and this, or like we had products that were a part of frustration-free packaging, which I think it's now technically SIP, and FFP is gone. So it was like we had to figure out how to get that certification off of some of our products to move them to Seller Central. But I wouldn't have been able to do it without Amazon's help.
Yeah. So it sounds like the agency help was not as much as the Amazon's help. That is always not very good quality anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why it takes so long. I also don't want to discount agencies out there who focus on this, because I think there are some agencies that are very good at it. I just don't know that during that transition period, I don't know that I had the right team to help me with it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you don't know, right? So it's very hard to know. And these asking for references and things like that doesn't really matter because they're not going to give you a bad reference, right? So
yeah, it's hard. It's hard, right? But the biggest thing was persistence, and I hate cases, but I realize that if I don't manage them and I'm not the one reopening them, like they're gonna close, and then I'm gonna have to start all over. So I don't remember their time frame, but like once on Seller Central, at least, like once they close it, like you only have I don't know, 36 hours to reopen it or something like
Yeah.
that. So it's, you have to be on it like 7 days a week, because sometimes they'll close it on a Friday afternoon. And if you don't look until Monday afternoon, you have to start back at ground zero.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I tell people you always have to be on top of your Seller Central, whether it's a case or some kind of notification. So, okay, so listings, did you work them through your Seller Central account, or did you have to go to brand registry? Because there are some listing issues that is much easier, faster to solve through brand registry support. Which one did you use?
I'll add one in there. I'll add Vendor Central. So all three. So it depended on the issue. So like listing, once the catalog was migrated, I worked mainly with brand registry and Seller Central support to get the catalog cleaned up. When products were still in the catalog on Vendor Central, a lot of times I had to, if I was trying to update, different attributes before I moved it over because I knew it would cause issues, I would have to go through Vendor Central, and or like the frustration-free packaging issues I had to do through Vendor Central because that wasn't available on Seller Central.
Mm.
So it's like, and that's, I think for brands moving, if you have a team, great, that can work on this. If you're solo and you're going to be in it 100% of the time, and you're going to be the one who's going to have to solve it and figure out what channel to go to. But I also think there's a lot of resources out there that can help. Like, there's a couple issues that I'm running into now that aren't related to this, but there's forums and on Slack and stuff like that where there's people who have seen it before. Like, I'm not the first one who ran into these issues.
Yeah, yeah.
So ask questions and reach out.